President Biden in Louisiana today to survey damage from Hurricane Ida after almost a week of the deadly storm ravaging the eastern half of the United States. The East Coast still reeling from the aftereffects. This as the death toll from Ida rises. Senator Joe Manchin is calling on fellow Democrats to hit the pause button on the $3.5 trillion spending plan. He explains his areas of concern in an op-ed. And the Pentagon gives updates on the Afghan refugees entering the country. The head of Homeland Security says all individuals will be tested for the virus. Tune into Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. While Hurricane Ida might have moved on, several states still reeling. Aside from destroyed buildings, Ida also took several lives. Almost 50 dead in the Northeast. So far in total, Ida has claimed the lives of 61 people across 8 states. At least 13 people in New York City. Police said 11 of them in flooded basement apartments. New York saw record levels of rain Wednesday night. In 1 hour alone, the city got as much rain as Chicago typically gets in the entire month of September, 3.15 inches. That set a new record for Central Park, beating out the other record from a few days prior. And the historic flooding in New York kept the police busy. New York Police Chief Rodney Harrison said Thursday the department has made 69 water rescues and 166 non-water rescues related to the remnants of former Hurricane Ida. The storm unleashed dangerous flash floods and tornadoes overnight. Harrison said 20 of the 69 water rescues happened in Queens, with most of them at the ongoing U.S. Open tennis tournament. The NYPD also found nearly 500 vehicles abandoned across the city. Additionally, Harrison said that more than 800 passengers were rescued from across the city's subway system. A task force of NYPD officers was going door to door to check on residents in areas of the city where water rose to dangerous levels. Harrison said they rescued a disabled man in Manhattan early Thursday when he became trapped inside his home due to the storm. Photos of the rescue show officers carrying the man and then his dog from inside a flooded building. And New York Mayor Bill de Blasio saying the city has never seen anything like it.
This is not the challenge we've had in the past. In the past, you think about flooding, it was coastal areas. That was a huge challenge. This is something entirely new. Rain that accumulates so quickly that people can be trapped in their own basement far away from any seashore, and that people can be trapped in their cars because the rain accumulates so quickly they don't even know what hit them. We're in a whole different world.
And neighboring New Jersey also reeling from the flooding. The governor announcing aid to help in recovery efforts.
Today I'm announcing $10 million in grants that we're making available through the New Jersey Economic Development Authority for small businesses affected by Tropical Storm Ida. If you've been crushed and you could prove it, you're eligible.
And what about other states? President Biden in Louisiana today to survey the damage.
We've also provided $100 million in direct assistance directly to folks in Louisiana, with that $500 going into their bank accounts so that they can deal immediately with emergencies. And I'd love to hear from you if you've heard anything, feedback from your constituents about that at all, because sometimes it's just that what you need that moment, and it can make a difference.
As of Thursday, more than 800,000 people are still without power, many relying on gas-powered generators. And to deal with the gas crisis, the Environmental Protection Agency is stepping in to help areas facing a fuel shortage due to Hurricane Ida. The EPA has issued a second emergency fuel waiver for Louisiana and Mississippi. The first one was issued on Monday. The waivers allow for refineries to produce, sell, and distribute winter gasoline. According to the fuel app Gas Buddy, the winter blend of gas can evaporate easier and is cheaper to produce than the summer blend. Environmental regulations usually do not allow winter blends in summer to limit ozone pollution. But Louisiana and Mississippi have been dealing with fuel supply issues since the storm hit last weekend. Gas Buddy reports about 2/3 of the gas stations in New Orleans and Baton Rouge are without gas. With the damage from Ida, there's been concerns about the nation's infrastructure. And what about the infrastructure package? Democrats wanted to pass it along with a massive spending bill by using reconciliation, which requires a simple majority to pass and bypass the filibuster. But it looks like Democrats no longer have the votes they need to pass a $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill this month. To pass it with reconciliation requires every Democrat support. Now, moderate Senator Joe Manchin says he is not ready for that vote just yet.
I would ask my colleagues and all of the Senate to hit the pause button on the 3.5. Hit the pause button. Let's sit back. Let's see what happens. Well, we've got 4 or 5 different scenarios can happen to us in our economy, in our country. So don't you think before we put ourselves in another bind or make a commitment or divide our country further, that we should maybe hit the pause button and say, let's look at this a little bit differently.
Manchin says he is skeptical of the price tag and the time frame. Manchin also reiterated his disapproval for some Democrats' proposals to pay for that spending, including previous White House-backed plans to increase corporate tax rates from 21% to 28%. He has instead indicated he would support a 25% corporate tax rate. And Senator Kyrsten Sinema has also publicly stated that she opposes the $3.5 trillion spending level. And Republicans are also unified in their opposition to the package. Now, let's turn to updates on Afghanistan. The mission commander tasked with ensuring those final few flights out of Kabul is now on safe ground. He talks about his experience. The approach into and out of Kabul allowed little margin for error. Mountains surround Hamid Karzai International Airport, and the valley is prone to bad weather. Thousands of Afghans on the field and thousands more desperately trying to get in. And nearby, a terror threat from ISIS-K. In this environment, Lieutenant Colonel Alex Belbath had a mission: the end of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Instead of focusing on the danger, what all the operators do is you focus on the mission you got at hand. So you focus on your individual tasks, you focus on success, and you focus on doing your part of the mission as well as you possibly can.
Belbath was the mission commander of the final 5 flights out of Kabul. He snapped this picture of another C-17 taking on Afghan evacuees. In the background, the cars and baggage and hangars about to be left behind.
I graduated the Air Force Academy in 2001, and a couple months later, September 11th happened. So my entire career has been spent with a conflict in Afghanistan, and to see it come to an end, that does make a mark, I think.
Belbath knew time was precious. Every second on the tarmac was added risk. And with the final troops loading up, the danger was at its peak. Major General Chris Donahue, the commander of the 82nd Airborne, was the last soldier to step off Afghan soil, the military says. Belbath later snapped this cell phone picture of his own flight. Then Belbath gave the order, clamshell, close the cargo doors. Minutes later, flushed the 4th, the order to take off.
I was able to see in front of me, the first aircraft had just made their left turn, the second aircraft right behind them, the third aircraft had just lifted off, the 4th aircraft on the runway. I had the entire picture of the C-17 force in front of me. For sure, an image that I will never forget.
The 5 C-17s had been on the ground a total of 3 hours. He says the end of a 20-year war was his final flight. And what about the Afghan refugees entering America? The Pentagon says that there are currently 25,600 Afghan evacuees housed at 8 military installations in the U.S.
We're working to increase capacity to at least 50,000. And we continue to provide culturally appropriate food, water, bedding, religious services, recreational activities, and other services such as transportation from the port of entry to the location of accommodations, and some medical services.
And Homeland Security Head Alejandro Mayorkas on the resources being provided for the refugees.
At the military bases, we are providing the resources individuals need, to include medical care, language access resources, immigration assistance, and other vital services.
He also said all refugees are tested for the virus. Now, speaking of the virus, Australia is taking a different approach to combating the pandemic. The Australian Parliament passed a sweeping surveillance bill last week. It gives new powers to the federal police and the country's Criminal Intelligence Commission. The bill gives law enforcement the authority to modify or delete the data of suspected offenders, collect intelligence on criminal networks, and take control of a suspected offender's online account. Those who refuse to comply could face up to 10 years in prison. The Home Affairs Minister defends the bill, saying it will protect Australians by combating organized crime gangs. But many civil liberty groups are worried that it will infringe on individuals' right to privacy. The Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, which is a federal agency, says these powers may negatively affect many people who are not suspected of criminal activity. The agency said in March, given the privacy impact of these law enforcement powers on a broad range of individuals and networks, they should be accompanied by appropriate privacy safeguards. The bill needs only the Governor General's signature to become law. And in some lighter news, a new kind of taxi could be coming. NASA is thinking about air taxis as a transportation option in the future. They are trying out the technology now with Joby Aviation. That company makes this all-electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. NASA is testing its performance in acoustics. Someday, air taxis might be the way to travel between cities. Talk about a commute that will fly by. And before we end, it's National Skyscraper Day. Observed each year on September 3rd, National Skyscraper Day is a time to appreciate the beautiful architecture and construction of some of the world's tallest buildings. They are called skyscrapers because they tower over other buildings and look like they literally scrape the sky. In cities where space is a premium, skyscrapers allow developers to build upwards rather than take up a lot of land. They often define a city's skyline, but they've only been around for about the last 130 years. The first skyscraper in the world was built in Chicago in 1885. Today, a building has to be at least 40 stories to be classified as a skyscraper. Celebrate National Skyscraper Day by taking an elevator to the top one and just enjoy the view. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and have a wonderful weekend.